Hi, my name is EllaWalders, and today I will be talking about my project that explores relationship between different risk factors and other factors on the roads of Phoenix. So, my main goal for this project and motivation was because of how dangerous driving is in the US, and to explore the different factors that impact crashes, specifically more dangerous crashes. Um, Depending on things like the date, weather, and people driving, meaning their age, gender, and if they're abusing substances on the road, and other factors such as that. So, the roadmap of this project is to first find and locate the data, put it into my Google Colab notebook so that we can begin step two, exploring the data, transforming it to meet the needs of the project. Step three is to load that data into an SQL relational database, then to query the data to see the relationships between said data. Finally, we can draw inferences and not statistically based, but conclusions off the data, right? So extracting challenges. First was obviously finding good data that matches what my goal was. My goal was always something to do with traffic, and I was hoping to include weather patterns as well as, um, excuse me, different things about the driver, right? So I was able to find this in Tempe government data, data.tempe.gov, right? And then Open Metro was able to give me a free API with historical weather data that I was able to cross compare with the Tempe data based off of um, the date. So then challenges of the transformations, obviously you have to look for non-datas in both the API and the crash data, right? So for the crash data from Tempe, I went through and replaced all of the categorical data such as injury severity, gender, and substance use with an appropriate title. For gender, it would be unknown. And for something like substance abuse, it would be something along the lines of not apparent, right? And then I was also able to change the data type of the date time column to date time. And then I looked at unrealistic data points after filtering out those non-data points. And through graphing, I found points at 122 and 255 in the age category. So I immediately went through and cleared out anything less than 16 because that's when unlicensed drivers would be driving, and greater than 100 because after that, it is just not realistic to be driving on the road. So then I went into the weather API. I immediately changed the titles of the columns and also went through temperature and changed it to Fahrenheit for an easier um, viewing experience for American viewers, right? The schema that I decided on after I made or while I was making my tables, I went with a weather, a when and where, injury, substance involvement, and then driver information, right? So all the things that are basically about the driver come from with an incident ID primary key. Excuse me. They have an incident ID as their primary key. Excuse me. And then when and where also has incident ID, so it can be connected to driver info and substance involvement as well as injury. However, its primary key is date time to connect to weather database, which also has a primary key of date time. Um, Moving on, the queries that I was talking about in my notebook include precipitation and total injury, precipitation and accident in general, injuries based on gender, substance use based on gender, and age and accidents in general. So some of these are looking into some stereotypes about drivers. Some of these are just worried about overall safety, right? So these first two were pretty inconclusive, I would say, as rain is not often in Arizona. So you would probably want to find percentages as well. However, you can see that since there is so little injuries and so little accidents that happen during precipitation, it's probably pretty even between accidents that happen without and accidents that happen during precipitation, right? And then injuries based on gender, men had over 500 more injuries. So that stereotype that women are not as good of drivers might not be true, right? And then substance use based on gender, men also had more accidents under the influence of either drugs or alcohol, which could also be related to the injuries based on gender. However, I did not specifically look into that. Age and accidents in general, um, early 20s, and teens, so 16 through 22 years old, definitely had the highest accident rate. I'm sad to say the insurance companies are correct on that, right? And then once you see the later parts of that list, even people in their 70s have very little accidents compared to those early years. What are some of the implications of this, and where can we go with this database? So this I think, is such a powerful database. We can look into different relationships between age, gender, um, substance use, weather. You can even try to stretch something as far as if women drive more on rainy days than men, right? So I really think that this has so many opportunities. As I was discussing kind of throughout the queries, we could definitely start looking at percentage of rainy days and cross compare that with how many accidents. We could do the same process with gender and age on the roads. I genuinely think there are so many opportunities, and I would love to keep just messing around with this database and looking more into it, seeing what really lies beneath it. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed as much